Matthias, are you ready?
I think we're ready.
Good.
Recording has started as well.
Well, then let's get us started as well. So, welcome everyone on today's webinar. We're very glad that so many of you joined us. I'm here today with Matthias, my colleague.
Yes, hello and welcome everybody.
Yes, today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is boosting sponsorship value. We all know the recent situations, COVID and all those, that have shaken a little bit the global sports sector, which of course on the sponsorship world as well. And that's where we thought with Matthias and we for a little while and to discuss a little bit what kind of changes there are and what the clubs need to do in order to get ahead of those challenges. So I've known Matthias for close to 2 years now, and back then he was working still at the Swedish Football Federation.
Truly was.
Yes, you were, and we were in a little bit of a different relationship. I was trying to help, and we were discussing, of course, how can fan engagement and data-driven marketing be connected with the federation's goals. But now you're luckily with us, so we can make all of this together here. So just a few words about Data Talks, and then we go into sponsorship directly. So if you don't know, Data Talks is a Swedish-based or Stockholm-based company. We are a certified customer data platform focusing 100% on sports. Most of our customers are in the Nordics and in Europe, but recently we have also started our expansion into Australia. We have a growing customer base, sizes of clubs from small to quite big ones as well. So what's the agenda of today? First, Matthias share with you a little bit the expectations, what you can expect from this session, then give you an overview of the sponsorship landscape. And after that, after this little theoretical session, we will go into what our vision is, what the Data Talks vision is in terms of sponsorship. And then in the end, so that it doesn't stop at being theoretical, we go into the practical. We try to give you some examples of some from our own customers and some from other clubs as well, which we believe are very good examples, which we believe that should be followed by all sizes and all different kind of sports organizations. So let's get started. Are you ready, Matthias?
I hope so. I feel ready. So it's a topic that I love. So let's dive into it.
So what can the listeners expect from this session?
We hope to give some great ideas on how to meet the demands of sponsors or partners today and tomorrow, actually, because we have spotted some nice trends, you and I. We are both sport lovers. We love the world of sport, and we want to help out to make as much money as possible actually into the world of sports. And that was the reason for me joining you as well as Data Talks, because we have seen the potential in using data, not only as a B2C revenue model, also in the B2B world. And because we actually believe today that with all the tools that's out there, you can create true win-win partnerships. And also, we see the potential of bringing fans and partners closer together in a non-commercial way, in a smart way, where you actually create interest for brands instead of just pushing them in as customers.
Yes, and of course sure, traditionally there's this B2C thinking and there's B2B thinking in sports, but one of the main premises that we have is that it all belongs together. So one doesn't out the other one.
Exactly. And then, as we will talk a little about data, about Data Talks and what our product actually does, we hope to feed you as well with some ideas on how to communicate smarter and on a more personal level. And also the importance of knowledge of the people in your database, and by that prepare you for the future actually.
Oh yes, we are nerds enough to talk about databases, but also we are sports lovers enough to see the beauty of the game and of course to see the whole truth. So we promised you that there will be a landscape overview of the sponsorship market. So how is the sponsorship market today, and why are sponsors?
Yeah, we've seen from the participants today that there is a great knowledge and great representation from lots of interesting clubs and markets. So you're probably fully aware of why people or why companies are sponsoring. This is just one survey being done, but the important thing here is to see, like, okay, what does these different numbers mean, and what are happening with them. Today, there's always been these traditional pillars within the sponsorship, with exposure and association towards the organization, use players or use logos in your marketing, tickets, hospitality, and so on. But over the past years, especially in the Nordics, where I've been active, storytelling is now the key aspect. And what we can see is that a lot of more companies are now measuring what this sponsorship is giving them. Well, how much direct sales comes from these partnerships, and the social responsibility and the corporate social responsibility that they want to have in line with these partnerships.
Exactly. So the two main trends, of course, we keep the foundations, brand exposure. Yes, everyone wants to see their logos out there. That's no question. But what's coming up is more the measurability and more the direct sales or ROI measurement, and also how you connect the sponsorship that you're doing with the responsibility, the social responsibility. And that's where we always have with Matthias pretty good discussions on how different markets react to the CSR approach that's out there.
Exactly. There is a clear trend that we see, and that's going to come all over the world within shortly, is that there are no more emotional sponsoring, or there is much less emotional sponsoring today than it was a couple of years ago. There's the sponsorships now are very purpose driven. They want to tell this story. They want to prove why they are better than their competitors. And so there are now clear goals and objectives with why they are interacting with this sports organization or with its rights holders. And then we also have the global goals from the United Nations, which is something that almost all companies have to have some kind of relationship with. And here sport actually has the potential of helping them, mapping up against some of them: health, education, equality, sustainability, for example.
And that's also here an example is that we've seen, I don't know, probably most of you are aware of Champions League in football, and of course the main sponsors, and the Champions League have had the same beer provider for many years, and for many years they've been just providing the advertising of their traditional beer, which is, of course, it's a great thing. But in recent years, they actually shifted their message a little bit, and they started conveying the message of drink responsibly. So they, instead of promoting the traditional beverage, they started promoting the non-alcoholic beverage, and by that promoting responsible supportive behaviors. So I completely agree with you on this one, but also coming back to the numbers. So what can we say about those?
I was going to tell about the other great things that I see today from clubs also is the community engagement.
Mm-hmm.
It's lovely to see school activities and drop-in activities being done all over the world with sport as an organizer, and together then in relationship with different sponsors and partners. And we see some great results from that, bringing kids away from the streets, bringing them back to sports and so on. So.
Yes, for sure. And then, okay, the goals are clear. We have the exposure, we have the direct sales approach, we have the CSR approach. So what are the challenges here?
The challenge is that you must be able to map up against what the demands from the partners or the sponsors, and for that you need data. You need to be able to show what you're actually doing for the partners. And remember then that it's less emotions and more hard facts, and they will require some measured performance on how this sponsorship is delivering, how many people are actually engaging with you and your partners in different ways. And get to know your partners really good, so that you know what they are measuring, so that you can have really good discussions about it, so that you don't end up when renegotiating and they just tell you that, no, sorry, that happened to me actually back the Swedish FA that we can't see that we have sold enough products thanks to this sponsorship, and that's actually where you and I, when our relationship started, because I needed tools so that I could prove that, but hey, I've actually delivered this many leads to you, or this many persons have actually went through us into your website or into your environment.
Yes, and that's where we will come back to this, but we will talk about customer journey thoughts and how you need to manage the expectations correct and set up the KPIs, the performance indicators connected to those different steps: reach, engagement, conversion, whatever the conversion is. Is it conversion in sales, or is it conversion in participating in some kind of CSR activity? That doesn't matter, but at least be measurable. But okay, let's go a little bit further. You prepared some nice comparisons.
Yeah, we did. And as a fun fact then, but in the opportunities that we see, and why we think that there is such a great potential for sport to actually take some more pieces of the marketing wallet, if we should call it like that. We looked at the 10 biggest sports, the 10 biggest sports and their fan bases, and we looked at the 10 biggest social networks by size. So looking then, comparing football then with its 4 billion people towards Facebook, we can see that football actually is a little bit bigger. We see that cricket is a little bit bigger than YouTube. We see that ice hockey is a little bit bigger than Instagram and so on. So sport is a huge database. It's a huge potential. And then, yes, of course, not all football will be in one place. FIFA will probably not ever succeed in that, as Facebook then has all. But going back to your market and knowing your market, I think that you can present really good possibilities towards partners.
For sure you can, but of course, it is one of the important challenges here that even if there are 4 billion people of football, which I believe there are, well, how do you get that in one place? How do you reach out to them? How do you measure that you actually have the 4 billion and you reach the 4 billion? Mm-hmm. That is the challenge, and that is something that we need to get hold of in the next couple of coming years, basically. But how do you? Okay, so we have the numbers there, but how do we measure this? How do we measure the fan base?
Yeah, it's of course super tricky to know what it's worth, because the actual value, then going back to what we said in the beginning, it's not just exposure or just awareness has no actual value anymore. It's what you can do with these people. So the closest thing we could think of, you and I, were then to compare it to the social medias and how they are working. So then looking at some of the efficient approaches that's being done today in social media, also going away from logos and banners to actual interactions and things. We found these 3 things, like retargeting. When you try to reach a person again that has interacted with you somehow, you could think of the abandoned cart, for example. Of course, if somebody been in your website and want to look at the product and put it in the basket, of course you want to talk to them again, and that has a high value, of course.
Oh yes, one of the best performing campaigns actually in terms of merchandise. So what are the others?
And then we have the actual cost per click then, and when you go away then from just brand awareness into some kind of interaction, you get them, you transfer them to their website, or they interact, they click on something, some information from you. And then also the possibility to target an audience, your ideal customer profile, to be able to segment hard and have a specific target audience. Of course, that drives the price up. So what we can see from social media is that it's worth between $0.50 to $1.50 or something like that, and around the euro then in average. But this is not numbers that we want you to. You don't have to know these numbers. You just need to know that your partners are having these discussions with Facebook and Google and other places where they buy AdWords, so that you know, and then having this honest discussion with them, you can understand what they are paying. So if we look at Facebook, for example, and different industries, and what they actually cost per action is in this will be familiar figures for them. And if sport can deliver better, then we have a really strong case. That's what you and I believe in, right?
Exactly, because what you're saying here is that some of the industries are paying $50 per acquisition on Facebook, which is quite a high number. And of course, it's what we need to look at is the total marketing spend of a company and how they distribute that between traditional advertising and sponsorship. And what we will discuss now in the Data Talks vision is how we can move from traditional advertising money over to the sponsorship side and show the added benefits, the added value of sponsorship.
And to be clear there, we don't want you to sell advertisers, because that's not what we believe in. We want this to be part of the package. And we know that there's all of these companies that you're talking to, I would guess, have a higher marketing budget than sponsor budget. So we just want money from that wallet as well into the sponsoring part, or into the sponsoring wallet. And we also have this slide then looking at the cost per click, which then varies from almost $0.50 up to $2.50 when it's very specific searches.
So, okay, we see the hard facts now in comparison to traditional advertising, but we also say that sponsorship is not just about advertising. So, speaking of your experience, how do you set the price of a sponsorship package?
Yeah, that's of course then that's the fun thing with it, that there is no fixed price list. It's definitely industry based, so that for example, betting companies, there is another price list than if you go to some other market with not so high competition. And that's one of the greatest benefits that sport has, is that you could set the price that you negotiate together with your partners.
And of course, basic also on the fan base and the potential reach and potential engagement, and counting backwards on the expected conversions and goals.
Exactly, and to have this set goals together with your partner, and yeah.
And for sure, this requires a mindset change, because we know where the world is going. That's no question. We know now, also everyone knows, because we have the hard facts about the advertising part. But then we also see sometimes in our discussions with clubs that they are not really there yet. So what do clubs need to do?
They need to be very clear on having the data in one place, so that they can work with the data, and then they need to be able to segment on this data really, really good, so that they could create true win-win partnerships. This is the Data Talks, one of the visions at Data Talks, that we offer the right message or the right product to the right person on the right channel and at the right time. And one example that we have here for creating these win-win partnerships is a traditional newsletter send out or mail send out that the club does. If you have this possibility, then if you have all the data, if you have all the knowledge of your database, you could make these smart segmentations and actually let your partners use their marketing strategy that they have already in place, so that you connect the ideal customer profile with this newsletter, through this newsletter. For example, then you have some product that you want to promote to men between 30 and 35, for example. We make sure that when this newsletter goes out for the men 30 to 35, you put this ad in.
And yes, and that's where it's so important that clubs, sure, they will do this one message for the entire database, that will never die out, but they need to start also personalizing the messages based on their own ideal customer profile for a specific campaign, or connected to the partners, to the sponsors' objectives.
And then, yeah, exactly, because the whole ambition then, going forward with this, and this is where we are aligned, you and I, is that then we will have a much higher conversion rate for these sendouts. We will drive more people into the partner's website, and we will have a happier partner and a true win-win partnership.
For sure we will. But that assumes, of course, well, a good mindset. It assumes that everyone follows this approach, but even more importantly, it assumes that the clubs and federations actually control their own database. Because so many times in our discussions with clubs, we have come across examples where they have outsourced their data to partners. They gave the right to the sponsors to handle all the data. They gave the rights to a merchandise provider, or even a ticketing provider can hijack the database of the clubs. And if the database is not in place, well, there's not much to do. Then it's a big fight that's starting between the club and the provider. And well, there's a lot of lost money out there and a lot of lost personalized engagement with the supporters. So one of the small conclusions in this presentation, in this session, is that your data is your asset. So before doing anything, I mean, make sure that you actually sorted out the data ownership, and make sure that whatever you do, whatever campaigns you do, whatever sponsors you engage, the data will you.
Exactly. It's the very first and most important conclusion that we will drive today is that never ever give away your data, and
Yes.
keep it and work with it, because data needs to be nurtured as well.
For sure, data needs to be nurtured. It's not just the width of the database, how many supporters you have in the fan base, but also the depth, how much supporters. And that's where also we need to look into like first-party data versus third-party data. We are all reading about this on LinkedIn. We see these articles, and sometimes it's easy just to overlook this. But well, to give a short overview, like first-party data is the data that you control, you collect. Second-party data is something that your trusted partners collect, but you use the data, you have full rights over the data. And third-party data is something that has been easily accessible, for example, through Facebook, but is going away a little bit. And that's like, I know that many of the audience have been spending so much effort and money into building a follower base on Facebook in the last 10 years. And then it's great, you have hundreds of thousands of followers, you used to reach them without paying, but then one day to another, well, the algorithm changed, so you needed to start paying. So that's one of the things why you need to focus on first-party data even more. But also, we have this small graph on the left side, which was a big short survey to advertisers and also to key players in the market, and asking them what their expectations are in terms of ROI in relation to the different types of data. So it's not just that personalized campaigns and first-party data is better and of course cheaper, but also that it drives higher results than third-party data and second-party data. So, well, with all the hard facts and all this market overview, I think we can conclude that going towards first-party data is, well, it has already been, but if it wasn't obvious, then now it's the time to do it.
It makes so much sense for me as well. If I just look at my own behavior and what I'm doing when interacting with first-party data, I'm in an environment where I want to be. I want to read about this club or this team or this sport organization. So yes, I'm more likely to see this ad.
For sure you are.
Brand.
But enough of the theory. Let's go into what you and I have been working on in this last couple of months since you joined Data Talks. So what is the Data Talks vision in terms of sponsorship?
Mm-hmm. And this is my pain point that I had talking to you. This is not a very clear graph. we are aware of that, but that's not the purpose either. This was my pain point working at the Swedish FA. This is a graph of the marketing spend that Swedish companies are doing on a yearly basis, and you can see that it's a little bit more than 7 billion euros. There are for lots of different channels, but the light blue one in the top right there, that's sponsoring, that traditionally gets about 10% on this 700 million euros per year. And then you have the big green one in the bottom, internet, digital advertising, and retargeting in social medias, actually, that gets 35%. And this is where we see that sport has such a great potential, because renegotiating with these companies that we did then at the Swedish FA. It was so hard to get more money into sponsoring, but I knew that they spent hundreds of millions, almost euros on digital advertising or on. So then my mission, as I see it, is try to move money from this internet piece into sponsoring, and for every percent that we are able to move, it's 70 million euros. So
exactly 70 million euros. That's a huge amount of money.
Swedish market. Exactly, and if we within sport just are able to present the data in a similar structured way as Facebook and Google actually are, and with the possibility to segment and target the right audience, the potential is there.
The potential for sure is there. 70 million is something which you already take quite seriously when you hear that number, but also if you know all the facts that we were discussing about first party and third party data, about the prices, about the engagement that you get, about the prestige that you get just by partnering up with the club. There's not really a question, at least not to us, about moving this donut chart a little bit towards sponsoring. And of course, we are not suggesting not to do digital activations. No, we are suggesting doing digital activations through sponsoring, because that is actually making it much more effective. But also this assumes that both clubs and the sponsors are fairly in for the long term. How much do we see about that, and what does this modern way of sponsorship impact that?
We have this traditional customer journey that you would say that has these 4 important steps, and traditionally then, as you said, sponsorship was very much about the reach. The 4 important steps are reach, act, convert, and engage them. And going away then from just reaching, sponsorship nowadays actually can help out in all of these 4 steps, and that's where the potential is, and that's why we put this headline that why shouldn't sponsoring have the potential of being the most effective marketing strategy? Because then going back to the researches that we've seen with first-party data being more efficient as an ROI driver, we can now track also and measure this whole journey within the sponsorship. We can see from the beginning the reach, then we can see how much, looking back at the newsletter example that we showed earlier, how much acting or how much conversion can we actually have into a partner's website and make them customers of a partner as well. And then engagement, that's been used before as well within sponsorship, within loyalty programs, that you could get access to tickets or have the possibility to pre-buy or have a discount or something like that. But as you see, we see potential now in all 4 of these ones, and you have the possibility as a rights holder to measure it and actually give these insights back to your partners.
And are the clubs on track? Because the goal is clear, the target is clear, the objective is clear, and the potential with the 70 million euros is clear. So are they already transforming? What's the situation there?
And this is then that we need to clarify and make sure that the mindset is correct. Then also going back then from less emotional sponsoring into more hard facts and so on. Sponsorship seekers still believe that sponsor wants to sponsor a specific team or a specific organization, but that's actually not then the truth anymore. We need to understand that it's the audience that this club or this organization has that's important. They have identified that group as their ideal customer profiles, and then they are more likely to pay up to reach these specific persons.
Exactly. So we need a little bit of more data-driven or at least business-driven mindset in the clubs. Some of them have it, and it doesn't matter.
Lots of them have it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's starting to get so.
And it doesn't matter if the club is small or big. Some of our small clubs by size have the most digital mature mindset, and some of the big ones where they're a little bit behind.
And then exactly as you said, if you look at arena capacity, there are differences, and that one cannot actually be changed very easily. That requires a huge investment if you want to double the size of your arena or something like that. So number of tickets that you can sell, that's fairly fixed one. But actually growing the database, as you say, everybody can do it now with the, and that's also having a great digital guy or a girl that actually can make the coolest content will drive your database up.
Exactly. So it's always a combination of having the data in place, having one creative and business-driven person, and then of course having the right partners doing the campaigns. That's the key to succeeding in this.
And strategic partnerships. We could look at, for example, this the Formula One series and Netflix. Now I saw today that they released about the tennis, and I heard that they're doing it for the golf as well. So it's obvious. Yes, it's cool. They increase the database, number of persons interested in these specific sports, and then they have these possibilities.
And there, of course, with the Netflix and Formula One partnership, the main goal is not necessarily to sell more tickets to a Formula One race, but to increase the awareness and to get more people psyched about Formula One, to watch the races, to sign up on the video players and replays. And that's why it's not necessarily always commercials that we're talking about. It's like supporters are not cash cows. They are there for passion, they are there for their engagement and so on. So it's more about getting the personal message out there and then looking at what kind of other opportunities you have on top of that.
And then now I think you are actually addressing one of the key aspects of this is the segmentation possibilities. Because as you say, you want to target different parts of within your fan base doing these activities so that it's not always Peter doing all the buys and Matthias do none. We want me to do 50%, you do 50% of it.
Exactly. It might be that I live next to a track, so I actually go to the race and I need to buy the ticket. That's my conversion, but you live very far. There's no track in Sweden, so you cannot go to it.
But I collect jerseys or
Exactly, or helmets for that matter. But okay, so how do we conclude the Data Talks vision then?
Yes, we put it like this. Knowledge of your audience is key. And the more data you can collect or the more you know about it, the higher the value you accept, because then you can hard target even more and present it to your partners in a really good way. And then the other part is just that the willingness to share this information and these insights with your partners. And then we're not saying that you should give the information to your partner. You should include them in the conversation in a very smooth way, just as you said, so that the fans doesn't feel exposed or something like that. We map it up so that with the messages that we believe is fit for them.
Exactly, and in the end, share the insights, share the metrics that they are interested in. That's something like expectation management and making the deals. What are the key metrics that you're looking for during the campaign and then measuring them? But okay, enough of the theory. How about examples?
Exactly, and then the first thing then, and then this is coming back then to the possibility to segment and actually talk to the right person in the right way. Everybody today requires a really good experience, and the problem that sports organization has is that all the target groups that you have today have different expectations. We're doing a very interesting podcast as well from the Detox side, looking at this Gen Z, for example, and how they want to interact compared to how my father, for example, still loves the traditional interviews. And so that you must be able to deliver this really relevant experience. And then we put up 2 traditional journeys here. It's a match before, during, after matches. How are we interacting? How are we? And then coming back to this newsletter send-outs or something like that. What are we doing for ticket buyers match day -5 compared to what are we doing for non-ticket buyers match day -5? And how do we interact with them? And how can we then also bring in sponsors to this? It's been done really smoothly, for example, man of the match or player of the match, player of the month, and so on. But then we also have the geographical possibilities. What are we doing for the ones attending an arena? And then you will have some really good examples of this. And what are we doing for the ones watching from home? And possibly one of the more important group, what are we doing for the ones that actually missed out on the match but are really interested in you? and your teams.
Mhm.
That's do. So then let's see, Peter, how we put it in from a technical point of view, how we put it into life.
Well, I would say it's rather practical point of view. Technical, we can, I mean, I'm a nerd, so you can talk about tech with me afterwards. But in this session, I rather would like to talk about the practical. So let's look at the fan journey of one of our clubs, actually, that we put this together. So and it's an idealistic and very simplistic fan journey, but what do we want to see? A straight line from becoming a fan of the club into becoming a loyal fan. And how does this start? The first milestone, of course, you might be watching the match on TV and so on, but the first big milestone when you register for something at the club, you give your data and the club can recognize you and the club can start pushing personalized messages to you. Then, of course, if you live in the neighborhood, or at least within close proximity of the stadium, then you will get the ticketing offers. So the club will push ticketing through email, SMS, social media, website. Of course, we all know about omnichannel marketing. So you get the ticketing offers, and let's say you actually want to go to this game, so you buy your first ticket. Very good. That's another milestone. And then there comes the segmentation. Do you live in the city of the match, or do you live far? If you live far, then the club can already include some sponsors about traveling offers, about hotel offers, and so on. But if you live in the neighborhood, then the next milestone, which we need to measure, are you entering the stadium? You have a ticket for sure, but are you going into the stadium? If you are going into the stadium, then we need to know, are you going in a lot before kickoff time, or are you going in just 5 minutes before? Because if you come early, and you should come early, because there are the great offerings in the food and beverage store, and also there are the activations normally in the stadiums by the sponsors, you should know about it. So connecting the stadium entrance with a push notification on the mobile application is one of the powerful tools that you can actually do to activate supporters, and that is also a very personalized message. Then, of course, ideally there's another touch point. Most often people drink at least one beer or one cola and then eat hot dog. That is some touch point that we also can collect. And then, of course, let's not forget, they come to a game, so they need to enjoy the game, and hopefully the team wins and everyone celebrates and so on. And then just after the match, the club can send out to all the participants a message saying, thank you, thanks for being here. Here are the best chances, here are the goals of the match. And then by that, of course, pushing or driving some people or driving some conversions towards merchandise sales as well. So it's like, that's why I started off this whole session with saying that B2C and B2B are not that separate. It's one fan journey that has multiple touch points and multiple milestones, where you include the B2C offerings, where you include the non-commercial fan engagement, and where you also include your partners.
And I love this ones because also it's easy to just have the same kind of thinking in all kinds of interactions that you have within a sports organization. As you say, it could be this flow from signing up to a newsletter, but it could also be for grassroots activities like the youth players having matches, and then you could make sure that they get the message saying that are you driving together to decrease the number of cars actually going to this game, to have the sustainability thinking and so on. So yes, there are so many smart opportunities out there at the moment, and it's also much easier to do them now. It's much less manual work.
It's much less manual work, and that's the key, that you don't need to think that this is overly complex. I mean, sure, we need to measure the results. We need to connect all of this in one place. And then from this one place, we need to make sure that our internal KPIs and also the KPIs of the partners are met. And then, well, that's why this single fan view, or this place where all the data sits, is very much needed. We need to create those places, and that's the feedback that we get from some of our clubs, that before this journey that we just portrayed, they were able to do by using 5 different systems, but there was no connection between them. And then measuring the results was almost impossible. It was Excel hell overall. But that's where single source of truth and single fan view is a very important concept, even for sponsorship, even for this modern way of thinking.
And that's also then what we're promoting, you know, is that you as well as the right holders knows the result.
Yes.
Back in the days, often it was just the partner who knew how much beverage was sold or how much merchandise was sold afterwards and so on. And then you have no real leverage going into renegotiation with them. But if you know the result as well, then you know what value you actually deliver. But then there is a concern out there that this is a super complex project, that no, we don't have the ability to do this because we don't have all the systems, and so please help us out here. What's the perfect, like, what's a smart club setup?
Well, the smart club setup, and of course there are differences between clubs, small clubs, big clubs, in terms of how many systems they have, but also in terms of what kind of marketing resources they have. The smaller clubs that we work with, well, they are happy to have one person in their marketing team. And for them, besides the KPIs that they're looking for, also the question of how much time do they save is a very important factor. But okay, let's start from small. So a small club typically has a website, they sell their tickets on there, and they sell some merchandise on there. These are the three key touch points. And then if they can connect this and add the newsletter, maybe SMS function onto this, and they are able to measure the results, then they really achieve this single fan view on that level. But then, of course, there are the bigger clubs, and the bigger clubs have mobile applications, they have a customer support function, they connect a gamification tool, a survey tool, social media, marketing automation. So the potential is endless with the number of touch points, but in itself, to get the single fan view with the basic concept of ticketing, website, merchandise is not complex at all. That is something that's very possible, and that has been proven by many of our smaller customers that it's very much within reach if you have the right mindset.
So, and what you're saying as well is that you can make the project very agile.
Yes, for sure. I mean, you always set, you know what the vision is, you know where you want to get, but then you start small and you scale up. You add one source, then you start using it. Once you're familiar and comfortable with it, then you start adding the next one and the next one. So it's a project that will go on, but it doesn't mean that you will not see the results immediately.
And that's also coming back to what we said earlier about data have to be nurtured. There will always be new data that we need and want to collect. Okay, should we then wrap it up with some really good activation campaigns?
For sure. That was in the expectations. We promised you to have some campaigns. So in the next 3 slides, we're going to go through 3, I think, very creative and some types of campaigns that can be replicated, translated into your environment as well. So one is from AIK Stockholm, one of the flagship clubs that we work with, and about their main sponsorship. So they signed a couple of years ago, local, not the biggest, but like second, third biggest, or like a mid-sized real estate company. The Swedish market about real estate is a bit strange because it's not difficult to sell an apartment, but it's difficult for the real estate companies to find new sellers. So that's why one of the main goals of this sponsor was to increase their market share and also to put the supporters' mindset more into selling. And that's why they developed this concept, Sälj Notare, which is the name of the company. And then how do you activate, or how did they activate the supporters? Well, of course, they developed a package, a special package through the club that was offered to the supporters. That is one thing even I considered it when dealing with my own private real estate questions. But also, they had one apartment for sale, and then they had this idea of including the players, including the club itself. So just as they do, they took photos of the apartment, they tried advertising, they posted it on the real estate website. But give the little twist that the players, and on the picture on the right side, you see the team captain of the football club was included. So just this, including the players and making the advertising a little bit profiled up by the club, attracted 10 times more visitors to this specific apartment than a normal apartment would get. And of course, I mean, it's great because this specific apartment got a lot of viewings, but also in general, since the club boosted this and the supporters started thinking more in terms of, okay, the club is doing this, then maybe we should be doing it as well. So they were more put into this consideration stage in their customer journey. So they were more interactive with the real estate company afterwards.
A lovely example of how to bring fans and the partner actually closer together without commercializing it.
Exactly. It's not overdoing it, but using what you have with a brilliant idea and spice it up with the power that the club has in communication. But let's look at a little bit more advanced, technically more advanced case. So we have another club that has McDonald's, one of the fast food restaurants, as one of the main sponsors. And of course, what do fast food restaurants want? They want more customers, they want more people in their restaurants. How do we do it? Well, of course, we had this single fan view already, but we needed to connect, and we need to connect the mobile application. And from the mobile application, the supporters can decide if they give us access to their location where they are moving. And if they do, then we actually can say that the supporter is moving close to one of the restaurants. And when they get close to the restaurant, then through the club mobile application, they receive a notification with a specific promotional message saying like, there's this club offer in the restaurant, come and enjoy it. And that is, well, that is coming back to the goals. That is a very pure increasing sales and measuring the results. So we can go all the way from how many people are there in the fan base, how many are moving in the neighborhood of one of the restaurants, how many receive and open the messages, how many actually go into the restaurant and enjoy the meal. And then, well, you track the entire customer journey from all the stages. So yes, this is definitely a technically more advanced case, but this is something very, very clear.
But also then in the discussions we will have with you going further is that scale up or scale down, as you said before. It could be done in a similar way for other things. The tools are there.
The tools are definitely there. And once again, the main point is the single fan view, connecting everything with everything.
And then we have a last one also, and then that's also a great way of both increasing the database and also bringing fans and brands closer together.
Yes, and this one is probably the best one in terms of engaging the supporters. It's a little bit of a gamification. It's not a club that we work with today yet, but it is an example that is worth highlighting. So there's this hockey club, and what do they want? Well, they wanted to increase the engagement with the supporters. They wanted to get more people in the database. So they developed this small game that you can see on the screen, where supporters could play and start collecting these points. And doing this, they also partnered up with this bank, whose logo they really included in all the games and made the awareness even higher. So actually, this was more awareness-based, but by combining with other types of goals, such as getting people into the database, and of course, giving another reason for the supporters, which is winning a signed jersey or a virtual meet and greet with the support or with the players. So that is like combining different goals. And that's what I meant when I said that there are three things that you need in order to succeed in the modern way of sponsorship. One, getting all the data in one place. Two, getting the creativity. And three, getting the good mindset partners around this. If you have those, well, there's not much that you can lose. It's more about what your aims and objectives are.
Exactly. And then looking back at the customer journey, as we said before, and how to map up this model sponsorship with these different steps, you see great ways here of like reach, like in this last campaign, and then act and convert in the other two campaigns as well. So I'm quite sure that Toronto and the bank had some next steps for this one as well. We can see how they converted these players into bank customers.
For sure. But all right, we are a little bit over time, so I think it's time to wrap up.
Yeah, you said it in the beginning, conclusion number one, protect your data. It's your asset. Don't give it away. Use it wisely and nudge it so that you improve the data and make it up to date all the time.
Yes, and also, I mean, sure, protecting what you already have, but have a strategy on how you build that further. There's always more supporters or more information about the supporters that you can learn. And it's not about, supporters are happy to share information if you give them the right motivation. So it's not, of course, no one gives the information if you just ask them to, well, being shared with the partner. They need the motivation, like a signed jersey, like a meet and greet. They want something back in return. They want their own customer experience to be great.
And be smart. Ask questions in different occasions when you interact with them.
Yes, for sure.
One simple question gives you a lot of data back.
Oh, for sure. And then, of course, you have the database, you do the campaigns, you need to measure the results. That is one of the main takeaways today. More and more sponsorship, but also your entire club operations require that you are very goal-driven, you are really measuring the performance. Because if you don't do that, well, you assume that things are going good, but if something changes, you don't have the power to change yourself.
Exactly. So we hope that this gives you some great ideas on how to go back and talk to your existing partners and your new partners. And then also please reach out to either one of us, and then we're happy to share some other use cases or some other discussions around data and sports and how to boost sponsorships, because there is numerous alternatives at the moment.
Yes. All right. Well, then thank you very much for listening in. We went 10 minutes over. Hope you didn't mind that. If you have some questions, then please share it now. If you don't have it now, then, well, you've seen our email address, LinkedIn, so you can find us easily. So, well, thank you, and I wish everyone a great day.
Stay safe.
Stay safe. All right. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.